A reading from the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus said, "Then the kingdom of heaven will be like this. 10 bridesmaids took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. And as the bridegroom was delayed, all of them became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a shout, 'Look, here is the bridegroom, come out to meet him.' Then all those bridesmaids got up and trimmed their lamps, and the foolish said to the wise, 'Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out.' But the wise replied, 'No, there will not be enough for you and for us. You'd better go to the dealers and buy some for yourselves.' And while they went to buy it, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went with him into the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later, the other bridesmaids came also, saying, 'Lord, Lord, open to us.' But he replied, 'Truly, I tell you, I do not know you. Keep awake, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour.'" This is a tough parable. It feels in tension with some of the other messages of unending grace. We just a few days back had the parable Jesus told of the workers in the field, where even those who came at the very last moment were given the full measure of grace. They received a whole day's wage. And now here we have Jesus telling us a story where these bridesmaids waiting, to do their duty, to welcome the groom to their town, because that's often how it went. The groom would come to the bride's town. Delayed along the way. They had enough for what they thought was going to be the right amount of time to wait, but then found themselves caught out. Then they get this rather uncharitable response from the ones who prepared. And I feel like pretty much every other gospel abundance story, the loaves and fishes and all those things, suggest that through God's abundance and God's grace, for which we are not deserving, there is enough for all who wish to be a part of, to be led into the wedding banquet. And here we have this parable, which feels really quite in another direction, doesn't it? It feels like Jesus is giving us this parable to ponder about what it means to be preparing for the bridegroom. And of course, this is right towards the end of Matthew's gospel, and this is just not even a chapter before Jesus finishes teaching and then goes on and says, "Look, it's time to prepare for the Passover." And of course, that turns out to be his final Passover and his final meal with his closest friends and disciples. So I do wonder if there's something about this story coming where it does in the narrative in Jesus' life, which is Jesus is saying our time does run out. Our time to prepare can run out. Our time to decide we're going to get our act together and welcome the bridegroom, welcome Jesus, can run out in our lifetime. Now, who's to say there isn't more time after we go from this life to the next? But Jesus is saying something here about it's not an unendingly open framework. There is a time where the party will be considered complete, and those who have chosen to come in will be in, and those who have either not chosen to come in because they're not interested, or we're going to get around to it, but they just didn't quite think it through and weren't really prepared to respond to the exigencies of the moment. What is Jesus telling us here? That it's finite, that God's grace is finite? It feels so against everything else he has been saying along the way and demonstrating along the way. And yet, here it is. Here it is as part of the good news of the gospel. So I think that's enough. Parables we have heard many times over. It's not an analogy. It's not a morality tale. So a deep dive with this parable would probably take us to different places. But where I land today is just thinking about whether or not there's an infinite time horizon for us to respond to God's call in our life, whether or not there's an infinite well of grace in God beyond which I cannot push, God's patience beyond which, and is there urgency to responding to Christ's message, to Christ's teachings, to Jesus' invitation for us to follow? Is there a sell-by date on that? If not in God's economy, then perhaps in our own life. And is there a way that this parable might urge us to not think of it as an endless runway, for us to kind of get ourselves pulled together and pointing in the right direction in terms of seeking God's nearer presence and deeper involvement in our lives and our deeper involvement in God's life in the world? If there is a finite nature to that, are we moving with enough urgency and enough purpose and enough direction in our own individual lives? And I'll leave that as my prayer for the day, that I might ask God to show me how it is. Am I being one of the wise bridesmaids, or am I not really preparing adequately? Do I have time left to get in on the party that God is throwing for all of creation? All of these things, of course, just one hot take on this parable, but I invite you to take this story and reread it and see where God takes you in it, where you find yourself in the story, and where you find the good news. May God be with you this day. May God bless you and keep you this day and always. Amen.